Hey guys, Chicken in Maine, Deboo.com with a Deboo.com surf forecast update. This forecast update effective around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, October 1st, 2016. And guys, lots to cover in this video update. We hope that you will follow along for the full video. Gonna start you off with this hurricane force low that's developing in the North Atlantic. This is the first hurricane force low of the 2016-2017 winter swell season for the North Atlantic. This is Nova Scotia over here towards the bottom left-hand portion of your screen, Newfoundland. This is the 48-hour forecast, developing hurricane force low moving up into the northeast Atlantic. Seas forecast to increase in excess of 40 feet. This image is in meters. That's 12 meters, so that's roughly right around 40 feet. We'll add a couple of to it. This is at the same time as Hurricane Math-Yoo down in the Central Caribbean, creating seas to near 40 feet. Latest out of the National Hurricane Center's Tropical Atlantic Forecast Branch showing 36-hour wind wave forecast, seas increasing to 38 feet. So guys, this is two systems in the Atlantic Basin producing seas near 40 feet at the same time. As we said in previous updates, this is a extreme phase that we're going through on this side of the northern hemi. Here's the latest look, or an earlier look this morning, of the satellite imagery that we captured and the difference between the Euro and the GFS. The GFS continues to trend on a more western track. Big change in the Euro overnight as the Euro now moves Hurricane Math-Yoo into the Bahamas and then curves it out to sea. The reasoning is, in our opinion, is that the GFS is picking up, now this is the old front here, there's another front coming, is picking up on this front right in here and wants to lift Math-Yoo up into here, then this way. The new player that's on the board is this area of low pressure that moved in behind Math-Yoo when it was exiting the African coast. Math-Yoo was 97L. This will likely end up being 98L invest. National Hurricane Center showing 20% chance of development next 5 days. Now, we talked about this yesterday in our updates on Twitter, social feeds, that this area of low pressure, the European model, is suggesting is going to lift ahead of Math-Yoo and then become an influence. So in other words, up like this and influence, weaken the ridge and influence Math-Yoo to turn to the northeast, which is its natural flow of progression. The GFS wants to send it up this way. Lots of uncertainty in the forecast, guys. Again, National Hurricane Center showing that area behind Math-Yoo as 20% chance of development next 5 days, likely 98L invest coming up. This is this morning's first visible Hurricane Math-Yoo. Math-Yoo moving off towards the west. Yesterday we asked about what the temperatures were down here in the Gulf of Venezuela. This pocket of water in here, very warm. You can see thunderstorm activity firing up in here in 3 different sections. Now, Math-Yoo weakened a little bit overnight, and it's likely to go through some phases of weakening and re-strengthening. We haven't looked at the images here lately, but this is a key indication that he may try to re-strengthen up, maybe reform another eye wall. This is last night's run of the European model. Again, just like we showed you in that image, the Euro now wants to move Math-Yoo into the central Bahamas and recurve it out towards the northeast. Over in the right-hand portion of your screen, here is that area of low pressure that's behind it that may influence Math-Yoo to turn towards the northeast and stay a fish storm. Guys, you are reminded that today is the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Joaquin 2015 and the sinking of the El Faro in the Bahamas. if we look back to last year, we are now, or it seems to be, faced with the same dilemma as most all models. Take Math-Yoo up the East Florida coast and the European model, the outlier, sending him out to sea. If you remember with Joaquin, the Euro was the only model that accurately predicted the results of Joaquin. We are having our fingers crossed that this trend will continue and the other models will follow suit. However, when we look at the satellite imagery and compare it to the GFS is showing a too low system but has a different solution. The GFS actually takes this low and drops it down in to the Atlantic. Not what the Euro is showing. So there's two different solutions, but both models hinting at two areas of low pressure. This is the cone of uncertainty. All of Florida is still in play. The National Hurricane Center reminds us that the cone of error outside of 5 days can be up to as much as 240 miles. Look at this cone, guys. So again, GFS into the central Bahamas, up the East Florida coast. Euro overnight, one run. There's another one coming out this afternoon. We're going to be paying close attention to it. Euro up into the central Bahamas as a fish storm out to the northeast. That's the natural flow of progression. We're hoping that the Euro is onto something and is going to prove once again why it's the gold standard in the weather forecast models. Here's another look at this now. Okay, let's look at this cone of uncertainty and then let's look at this image. I want you to notice, although there's no indication of the map, this is just off the southwest Florida coast in here. And again, the GFS is trending on sending it up the gut in here along with most all other models. And then the Euro overnight, one run, wants to recurve it. Here is that area of 20% chance of development in your far right-hand portion of your screen. Again, guys, this over here off southwest Florida, if we go back and look at the cone of uncertainty, that's right in here. Right about right there. So again, guys, lots of uncertainty in the upcoming forecast. We need to wait to see what Math-Yoo looks like once it gets north of the eastern tip of Cuba and into the Bahamas, and what the model trends are over the next couple of days. Gonna switch you over now. Give me a second. We're gonna switch to a buoy update. That's enough on Math-Yoo, and then we'll show you the latest run of the GFS to finish out. This is the Northeast Bahama buoy. Northeast Bahama buoy showing 6 feet, 10 seconds of swell out of the southeast. The buoy looks like it maxed last night at about 6 to 8 feet. This is that little front runner swell that's inbound to the southeast U.S. coast when Math-Yoo was 97 L invest. Switch you over to the West Bermuda buoy. The West Bermuda buoy's got some northerly swell on it, showing 6 feet at around 10 seconds out of the north-northeast. Now that's complements of the what is going to become the first hurricane force low out there in the North Atlantic. We forgot to point this out the other day, but as that low exited the mid-Atlantic up towards Nova Scotia and then off towards Newfoundland, it put a charge of northeast swell in the water. Jeff Carver called me from the Outer Banks yesterday, and he said a couple of locations had some overhead surf yesterday in through the mid-Atlantic and the Outer Banks. We're sorry for not pointing that out to you guys, but switching you over to the nearshore Canaveral buoy. Guys, we're blind without the East Canaveral buoy. All we can do is wait to see what shows up on Grays Reef and East Canaveral. East Canaveral showing 1 foot of swell height, 12 seconds out of the east-southeast. We look for that to increase later on today from what's on the Northeast Bahama buoy. Over to Grays Reef. Grays Reef showing 1 foot this morning out of the east at about 11 seconds. Again, guys, we're expecting a nice uptick. Could be wrong, later on this afternoon into tomorrow before the possible onslaught of Hurricane Matthew moving into the central Bahamas. Latest look at the 96-hour swell forecast, guys, and here's where the long-term swell could have big implications. The first hurricane force low is on the way. This is the original swell down here generated by this. This is a 96-hour swell forecast. A secondary low, we'll show you that here in the GFS model run in just a second, is forecast to move east of Newfoundland and re-energize. And I want you to pay particular attention how this image is in here in green, because basically this is the area of low pressure here, and this is the tail end of the front. This is new swell being generated, moving past Newfoundland from this new low that's going to develop in here that's going to reinvigorate. So pre-existing northwest swell reaching down in here to West Africa, new swell on the way with Hurricane Matthew lifting into the central Bahamas. This is going to get, if it follows the Euro forecast, we'll get northeast wrap going. Obviously, guys, just like we saw with Hermine when it moved into the mid-Atlantic, the closer Matthew stays to the coast, the less ground swell we're going to have, and maybe a here today, gone tomorrow type scenario, versus following the Euro and out to sea. The further Matthew can get out here, the more northeast wrap of ground swell. If it can get in over here, we already have a predominantly northerly flow for much of the entire Atlantic basin with a northeast wrap in here. Guys, that's a lot of water heading towards the equator. Now let's talk about that for just a second. I haven't been able to confirm this, but theory is, at least ours anyways, with all of this northerly flow and push of water, this should start to begin to cool off the central Atlantic and the main development region, cutting off the end of the Cape Verde hurricane season. Those are areas of low pressure that move over the Cape Verde Islands and give us what we are looking at today with Hurricane Matthew. From this point out, it appears that areas of low pressure that are moving off Africa will be involved or entrained or entrapped in the intertropical convergence zone and will head towards the East Pacific. Now, that would likely increase chance of homegrown development in the upcoming forecast. Long ways out, plenty of time to watch that. We'll deal what we have with at current in our hands. This is the 06Z run of the GFS, guys. Here is this hurricane force low that's developing in the North Atlantic. We'll advance the model for you and look at this butte that develops in here. Let me back this up a little bit. Again, this is seas increasing to excess 40 feet. Look at that. Here's Matthew down here at the bottom. Now, what I want you to think about in this is, think of this hurricane force low up here in the North Atlantic as a silver dollar, and think of Matthew at the moment as a quarter. This is moving mass amounts of volume of water. This is moving mass amounts of water, but in a localized area. Now, watch what happens here as we advance the model. Again, this is one run, guys. Big difference between GFS and Euro. We're just showing you the GFS as worst case scenario. Another area of low pressure passing up under Nova Scotia, out past Newfoundland, and boom, here we go again. Another picturesque area of low pressure, possibly the second hurricane force low for the North Atlantic. And then we want to go back and show you this swell image. Again, here is that area of low pressure. Here is the tail end of the front. We'll switch you back over to the model. Here is that area of low pressure. Here is that tail end of the front. Now again, the difference between the Euro and the GFS is the Euro is trying to develop an area of low pressure here. Watch as we advance the model run, you'll see that the GFS wants to bring a clipper-like system through here. Going to push the model through you just a little bit further, guys. Up the Florida coast, towards the Outer Banks. This is not a forecast. This is one run of the GFS. GFS drops that area of low pressure on the backside of Math-Yoo. Let me back it up. Here it comes, developing. That's going to box Math-Yoo in right there. And then kind of fade out and then up off to the North Atlantic. Now, that's a long ways out, guys. There's a lot of variables in play. Got to wait till Math-Yoo gets to right here. And let's see what the imagery, what the latest model runs are telling us. This is 72 hours, guys. The window is closing on the final solution of what's going to happen with Hurricane Math-Yoo. That's all we got for you for now. Stay tuned to the next update.